about a time when you have hated a job? What were you like? Were you easy to work with? Probably not. Were you fun to manage? No. Were you great with customers? My guess is no. But why? Why did you hate the job? Well, I've been researching this and looking at this for most of my life, and I've concluded that it comes down to about three reasons. Someone hates a job usually because the work is too hard, they're challenged too much, and they don't know what they're doing, and they struggle. Or the work is too boring. They're kind of burned out on it, or they've been there and already done that, and they just don't really care that much anymore. Or that life is too hard, because sometimes life is just hard and you're distracted. Well, today's guest helped open my eyes to that there is a fourth reason, and that is that the job lacks purpose and meaning. Nancy McGaw spent nearly 2 decades as a corporate banker. She joined the Aspen Institute and quickly became an ardent student of a values-based leadership with a keen interest in learning from and supporting employees, or as she calls them, intrapreneurs, and how employees or entrepreneurs can build more meaning into their jobs. Nancy McGaw, welcome to How I Turned the Corner.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
So I would love to hear the story of how you became a banker, how you went from being a banker to working for the Aspen Institute. It sounds like the kind of jagged path that I've had in my life as a software engineer to HR.
Yeah, it's certainly not obviously a logical progression. I went into banking hoping to be an international banker. I had lived abroad and was eager to put my master's degree to work, even though it wasn't an MBA, it was an international relations. So I thought, okay, I'll be in banking for a little while and then I'll, maybe do something else. Well, I ended up in banking, as you said, almost 2 decades. And what I found during that time is that I was learning a lot of really fascinating content about how financial systems work and what it takes to serve a large corporate client, which was mostly what I was doing. But over the years, I felt that there was something missing from that work and that I really wanted more meaning in my work. And this was echoed by others I worked with behind closed doors, that they felt they wanted more. And eventually I left banking and ended up at the Aspen Institute, which really became a place where I felt I could do my best work and that maybe I could help others do their best work and not necessarily have to leave their corporate jobs, be able to work in ways that allowed them to help their companies be better stewards of environmental and social concerns and also just have more meaning in their own work.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like some of the reasons, so I did not do this work before I started my company. I was just really informally involved because I'd get kind of itchy when someone would tell me they hated their job. And I felt really compelled to try to fix it and help them figure out how to navigate it. So I think in many ways, you and I are cut from the same cloth and that, we just wanted to help. I wanted my team and my employees and fellow colleagues to love what they did because I didn't see anyone who really benefited when they hated their job. And I had a situation too where I hated my job. Like I definitely was not naturally wired to be a software engineer, which is kind of comes around to my first reason why I think people hate a job is that the work is too hard. That work was too hard for me. I could do it. I had it as a degree, but I couldn't and wasn't wired to just sit there and do it all day long for 40 hours a week.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I felt very compelled also to help my employees. So I'm curious, I guess you just published a book at the beginning of May of 2024. Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
Yes. So tell us about the book.
So it was quite a journey to put this book together. The book came out of my own personal experience where I felt I really wanted to have more impact in my work and have more meaning in my work and really create value for the company I was working for, but also for society and the planet. And When I came to the Aspen Institute, I worked with leadership development people, human resource people, like many whom you've worked with over the years. And we were really talking about what kind of leadership we needed in business. And we said in order for business to really step up to its potential to be a positive force for change in the world. And out of those conversations and out of my own professional experience, came the opportunity for me to start a program for corporate social entrepreneurs, a clumsy term for people who were working in their companies, mostly in large companies, to create this kind of dual value for their company and value for society and the planet. And after many years of working with hundreds of these entrepreneurs, I thought it was time for me to try to capture some of the lessons from this experience with them into a book that I hoped would serve as a guide for others who wanted to work in this way. It's kind of, I imagined it as a guide that I wish I had had when I was a banker. And that eventually became this book, Making Work Matter: How to Create a Positive Change in Your Company and Meaning in Your Career.
That's great. So I think we both commonly believe that, business has an enormous potential to create the economic value and then also the positive impact on society, the planet, beyond just that tiny little ecosystem of the business itself. But it happens when there's a stewardship among the employees, right? And I think that's a big theme in your book. But I mean, how, or what are some of the tips and things you teach in the book for how you can help the employees see those opportunities and be that steward?
I think maybe the first thing is just to begin to imagine how you might work differently. If I were to go back now into my role as a corporate banker, I think I would ask myself, well, just look around. What's the bank doing? What is the entire financial industry doing to create this kind of dual value? And why does it matter for the company's ability to thrive in the long term? So I just take a broader view, and I'd look for what I call in the book white space. It's that space where you can, consider your own skill base. Consider the kinds of problems that really matter to you, and then try to find an idea in that white space where you could create a new service, a new product, or a new management practice. I think management innovation is very important for corporate entrepreneurs. What could you begin to imagine that would really make a difference in your company and matter a great deal to you? And once you have this idea, then it's not about advocating for change with relentless attention to it. It's more about finding allies and bringing other people into a problem-solving framework so that you build a collaboration of people who are really interested in moving in this new direction.
So do you think, I want to come back around to this point you just made, but I need to ask another question first, which is, what is the role of the management team in this, though?
It's huge. When we ask so I started a fellowship program. So when I refer to first mover fellows, those are the people we selected for this program, where we wanted to build the courage and capacity of change makers in business to be able to do this work. And repeatedly, we hear how critical it is that managers and executives understand the potential value that is embedded in these ideas, and to actually encourage people to develop these ideas and work with others. It's not about not doing the work that is in your job description. It's really about taking a more expansive view of those responsibilities. And if you don't have an executive team that sets an intention for the company to operate in this way, or a manager who really understands that you will be better at what your assigned responsibilities are if you're allowed to think in this innovative way, then you just run up against one obstacle after another, and it becomes very frustrating for individuals.
Yeah, I think the management role is almost more critical in making this work than the employees. I think if the employees are working for someone who's already creating those conditions, then this makes a ton of sense, right? And this is an awesome guidebook too for giving them just new ideas for how to maybe go about being that agent, that change agent. But boy, if you're up against a manager who has the attitude of you should just do your job and be happy about it, like that isn't going to work, right?
No, it's not. And it prompts people to either disengage, and you've often referenced the level of disengagement that there is in companies these days. You either disengaged, that what became known in a couple of years ago as this quiet quitting, or you say, this place isn't for me, I'm going to leave. And the cost of losing great talent, especially people who are really motivated to work in ways that deliver value for the company, because they see the importance over time of thinking creatively about how to manage the opportunities that are in these social and environmental trends that they care about, um, or attend to risks that are out there as a result of some of these factors.
Mhm. Yeah, and so I mean, I would guess that most of the listeners of this podcast are going to are listening because they want to be the best leader that they can be. And so I think there's also some things that are easy first steps that a lot of managers and leaders can take to help create this environment where people feel more meaning. And so one thought that comes to mind, and I'd love to have you share some more, but I know that, one thing that I see happen a lot is that sometimes leaders just don't know how to connect the dots to why the job is so meaningful or why there is purpose built into it. Like we can see that as leaders because we have that bird's eye view, but sometimes we actually have to say, the reason your job is so important is because if you don't do this, it has this trickle down effect. Or when you do this, it has this kind of an effect on our ability to serve our customers or help our employees, whatever it might be. Are there other easy tricks and things you could recommend to our listeners for what they can do to help build in that meaning in the jobs?
Well, I just want to underscore what you've just said. Um, People are not invited by managers to tell stories occasionally about who they've touched in their work, a customer, another colleague. Let's raise up some of these stories. And we find that, when you talk about the things that really worked well, it builds a foundation for more opportunities. I think managers paying attention to colleagues, this seems so obvious, but often is so missed, asking people what they need to be able to do work at their best. What really matters to them about their work? What is it when are those days when they really feel most alive in their jobs? Taking time to actually understand that from each of the people that you work with gives you knowledge that helps you then work in ways that allows that person to work more effectively. And again, it seems like everybody would just naturally do this, but we know that there are so many things that you have to do when you're managing, when you're leading a team, when you have budgets to manage and revenues to achieve, that sometimes you forget this. But again, in your work, you make this point over and over again. If the people that are working with you aren't working at their best, then it'll be even harder to do all of those other to meet all of those other objectives that are there on your to-do list.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. And I mean, I think back to the kind of quiet quit point. So that's which between you and I both know that's been around forever. I mean, that's the idea of just not giving it your all during the day for 1 or 2 hours a day. Like that's been around since we've been measuring job satisfaction. It just got labeled finally, right, during the pandemic. But I don't know if you read the recent study from Gardner Group that when they did their employee satisfaction survey that came out, but they had a really subtle point in there that I would love to expand on with you, which is that they said that when for the 59% of the population that currently are self-reporting that they are in a quiet quit state, meaning that they are not giving it their all, 1 to 2 hours a day is wasted, inefficient, or just flat out you're not earning your paycheck, which by the way, to the listeners is really, really expensive. Just do the math around quiet quitting. If you've got people not giving it their all 2 hours a day, and yet you're paying them for that, you can do that math, and it is painful math. And so, but what Gardner said is that when you just do subtle things to improve your culture, subtle things to show that you care about your employees, small things like that, it actually reduces the quiet quit significantly. So these small things that you're talking about doing are not only good for the employees, but they're really good for the bottom line. Do you want to expand or say anything additional with just your research and what you've learned on this?
Well, I think that's right. It's not that people expect to be overjoyed every minute in their jobs, but if they have an expectation that they will be valued, that they will have some time that's protected for them to do the kind of work that they can't do when they're in meetings or fulfilling orders or doing other things when they just we talk in our work very much about the power of reflection, the power to take some quiet time just to think about what you're doing and why, and whether it aligns with what your aspirations are professionally. And that can be built in to practice at work, I think, and it can be valued. I think that when you're scheduling meetings, do it at times that don't conflict with this quiet time. Or when you're in meetings, make sure as a leader that you're listening most of the time and not doing all of the talking, so that you really have a sense of what your teammates need and what they're thinking about and where they're struggling or where they're achieving. And make sure that all of that time spent in meetings feels useful to those who are being asked to attend. I mean, those, again, are small things, but they're big in when they're an established practice in a company. Mm-hmm. And of course, recognizing people when they do something that, works well for the team. People like to be recognized and need to be recognized in order to thrive in the workplace.
We have so many years ago, I put together a leadership or management training class that is geared specifically towards small businesses, timed and priced in a way that like small businesses can afford. Because when I opened up this business, I realized that was like just a big gap in the market. Like there isn't anything affordable and available that's effective to small businesses. And so we filled that hole. And one of the things we say in that, two things that I think are relevant to what you just said. One is to not forget that like you as a manager, whoever is reporting to you, you are the second most important person in their lives. Next to their spouse or their significant other or like your roommate or somebody along those lines, somebody they're spending a lot of time with, you as the boss are the second most important person, which means you can rock their world really easily with a frown or a negative comment or a thank you or a how are you, like it can rock their world. And so taking and being careful with that and treating that with reverence, I think is another really important part of, creating this environment where people feel like the work matters. And then the second thing to this as well is just thanking people. I don't know what it is. I mean, I hear this from bosses all the time that I'm coaching. Well, why should I thank them for doing their job? And I'm like, why not? Like, I don't understand. It's 2 words. Thank you for putting that proposal together. I really appreciate it. And there's a couple things in here we need to correct. Okay, great. You don't have to, if this is not perfect, you can still thank them for doing the work. And then you go back and you correct whatever was wrong. Thank you so much for taking the time to make that order. Unfortunately, it wasn't the right order we needed to make, but thank you for doing it. It was a big effort on your part. What's wrong with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for doing it. And, taking a few minutes to talk about, what that person learned in the process. Did they have any ideas about how we could make it easier next time for them to do this? Really valuing the expertise of your team and appreciating all that they bring to the collective effort. Enormously important, and it
Yeah.
doesn't take that much time.
No, and so simple. And it really does make a big difference is, caring for them and then also thanking them are 2 simple things that we teach in our class are like the things you can do right away to improve engagement, improve their overall job satisfaction, and help them feel like the work matters. Those 2 things, super simple. And to our listeners, as a reminder, those don't cost anything. Doesn't cost you anything to say thank you. Doesn't cost you anything to show you care.
That's right. And I would add one other thing to this, and that is to for managers to really understand the power of a positive question when engaging with employees. This I've mentioned this before. How can we help you do your best work? What did you learn from that experience? And not in a way to test them, but just to hear from them, to allow them to sort of work through problems on their own. Well, what do you think is the best way to approach this challenge? And, if you're having difficulty with somebody, what is it that's making it hard for you to engage with that person? It's again about taking the time, because the rewards on engaging in that way with employees far exceed whatever the cost of that time is.
Well, I think that's a perfect place for us to end the interview. Nancy McGaw, thank you so much for joining me today on How I Turn the Corner and for giving
Thank you.
these great insights into our listeners.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you.